Welcome to the Well Path podcast, where we sit down with experts and entrepreneurs across fitness, nutrition, mindfulness, and spirituality, offering you an inside peek at building a business and a life that is truly aligned. I'm your host, Brooke Robbins. Let's get into it. Alyssa, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me on, Brooke.
It is such a pleasure to have you on. I am really, really excited to dive in today. I think that the work that you do is going to be relevant for so many of our listeners. And as you know, having worked with you over the past couple of months, it's just been so transformative for my own life. So I'm really particularly excited to dive into it with you. I'd love to actually start from sort of just the basics of how you got into acupuncture, what your journey was to Eastern medicine, maybe holistically, and kind of start from there.
Sure. Well, it starts a while ago. Even when I was in college, I was very much attracted to studying biology, anthropology, and cultural studies. And I just didn't know how that was going to fit into a future. So I ended up taking a break from college and traveling for a while, but also going to school to become a massage therapist. And that was just the tip of the iceberg. I didn't realize it at the time, but that was what really opened me up to learning about different ways of health and healing, different ways of looking at the body and its relationship to health. And it allowed me to discover different ways cultures approached healing and health also. So I kind of found that blend of biology and culture with massage therapy. As I worked as a massage therapist, I think that opened me up to that world of natural medicine too. And I was around Chinese medical practitioners and, all sorts of different holistic health modalities. It was actually on my mind for a very long time about, is that going to be the right path for me? I was using it definitely in my own personal life, but making that leap and going to graduate school for it and making it my career, I struggled with that decision for a while. What finally motivated me to go ahead and make that jump was actually my mother's experience with Chinese medicine. And she was actually being treated for leukemia at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. And they had acupuncturists on staff. And they mostly treated a lot of the side effects that came from the chemo treatment and radiation. And just seeing how it improved her quality of life, I was like, okay, there's something to this medicine. Like, I want to know more. And soon after, I enrolled and started that path.
And this is actually a perfect opportunity to set the stage. I think with acupuncture, there's a lot of misconceptions, misunderstandings. I feel like when I talk to my friends about it, a lot of people don't really know what it is, how it works, what the kind of science is behind it. And then there's the energetics behind it, the basic principles of acupuncture, the energy channels, and how that translates into acupuncture as like a healing modality.
Sure. Yeah. It is a different way of thinking, especially for the Western mind, because with Western medicine or biomedicine, it comes from a place where it's looking for a cause. It's isolating different factors to define a cause that's the root of the disease. Where in Chinese medicine, it's always looking at the whole picture, the parts within a person's health always act within the whole. So there are all the concepts within Chinese medicine about the relationships to each other rather than taking them apart and looking at them as individual pieces. That's where many people have heard of the concept like yin and yang. You can't have one without the other, basically. Yang is bright and active, where yin is dark and at rest. And you can only define the two by each other. So that's the basic principle behind Chinese medicine. But as you start to go into the deeper concept of Chinese medicine, that principle is always there. It's important to understand that the parts always defined by the whole.
And what I find so interesting, I'd love for you to talk a little bit more about this because I don't really exactly know why we do this either. Whenever I come in, we always start with, you do like a pulse check and you check my tongue. I'd love to know, what are you looking for and what are the signals there? In my case, I've come in for a range of specific acute pain and sleep issues. And I wonder, is it similar to kind of like reflexology where there's like different points on your body that are connected to other organs? How do you see the connection of maybe you're having a symptom or a pain in this part of the body? And so like we might treat actually like a different or like this part of the body that's connected. How does that work?
It gets pretty complicated, but it's all restoring balance in the body. So generally, if you're having a disease, it's a result of some sort of imbalance in the body. And then within Chinese medicine, we have organ systems, meridians or channels that run through the body that communicate with each other. If that communication is cut off or there's a miscommunication, we can use the acupuncture points, herbs, cupping, a lot of different tools to bring that communication back together so the organ systems and the channels can work efficiently again. In your case, we've worked on different pain areas on certain channels. Even if the pain is in your hip, sometimes we have to work at the top or the bottom of the channel. The points won't always be exactly where the symptom is, but we're still kind of working to create a better flow through that channel.
That's so interesting. And for anybody that's listening, just as a quick, we'll go into with Alyssa as well, like some of the most common things that she sees. The thing about acupuncture that's kind of interesting, I find, is like it really can treat so many different things that it can almost be hard to know like when to go or what to for. But in my case, like at least most recently, the main issues were like sleep issues, specifically like waking up in the middle of the night at like 2-3 a.m. inexplicably night after night. And then there was also sort of an acute pain in the right side of my hip that I was feeling that just like couldn't go away. And both of those things have been resolved through acupuncture with Alyssa, which is why I'm so excited to have her on. It really does feel like sorcery sometimes. It's just so amazing that you can sit somewhere for an hour and it's like your body is magically healing itself, which is so cool, obviously through the help of a healer. But I just wanted to share that context for anybody that's listening. But maybe we could actually go into, I would say maybe specifically for, I feel like a lot of the people that listen to the podcast are like high achieving women in their 20s, 30s, 40s. What are some of the common issues that you see coming up among your clients in acupuncture that you feel like acupuncture is a great tool for?
A lot of different conditions that are a result of our stressful environment, unfortunately, and the pressures that are put on us externally, internally, whatever. But we see a lot of insomnia, lack of sleep, a lot of hormonal imbalances, either resulting as irregular periods, really difficult menopausal phases, infertility. Those are a lot of common issues that we see, especially for women, of course. But then just emotional issues too, such as stress, anxiety, get so bad that they develop into more physical. So I worked in DC for a few years, and that's a very stressful, high-powered environment. I was amazed to see the effects of stress on people in terms of hair loss and their immune system being depressed. A lot of that can, if left unchecked, transition to pretty serious health concerns. So, sadly, we want to try to avoid that at all costs, but it can definitely get that bad for some people.
I'd love to dig into that too. We talk a little bit during our sessions about the mind, body, soul connection. I think acupuncture is such a great tool to keep that in mind. Everything is so related. We talk about a lot on the podcast as well. This was one of my big epiphanies when it came to wellness, is that so much of the things that we try to kind of attack physically, it's not necessarily that there isn't a physical component to them. Oftentimes things do start emotionally, and that's kind of the root, and then they ultimately manifest into physical symptoms. In fact, we even talked about that potentially in the concept of like this chronic hip pain that I was having in my right side, which is thankfully now gone. The root cause might be something that is ultimately emotional or mental, and then the symptom manifests and then you treat it physically. It's important to also be treating it emotionally so it doesn't just recur. I wonder if acupuncture has informed your perspective on that, or have there been instances with clients that shed light on that? Because I think it's a hard concept for some people to grasp. It can sound a little like woo-woo, but I think acupuncture is really cool because it is both an energy and an art and a science at the same time. I'd love to hear some of your experiences with that.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what I really love about it, is that it doesn't separate those components. It always sees it as influencing each other. But I think a lot of people experience it in their lives on a regular basis. I think most of us understand that when we are under a lot of stress and not getting enough sleep, you get stuck out in the cold or the rain, and then you get a cold. We see how the physical and the emotional environment can impact our immune system and make us more susceptible to illness. In Chinese medicine, it just never separated those emotional and other factors in your overall health. So taking into account what your emotional state is, part of our treatment protocol, and understanding how we can help you and support you the best. For most people, stress is kind of a factor there, and how it impacts them can be different. But I would say a common thing that I see is how stress impacts people's sleep. Yeah, that's probably, a most common one. And as they're losing sleep, that influences all other areas of their health, because so many important things are happening while we're sleeping. Body repairs itself. That's when, certain hormones and neurotransmitters are being released or balanced, and that process isn't happening over a certain period of time. It takes a physiological effect. So with a lot of people, even though it doesn't sound super sexy, just working on their sleep has been huge. I'm really happy to see there is more awareness around that too. I think with the different devices that we can use, people are able to monitor these things and understand how it works in their life a bit more. That, hey, I got 8 hours last night and it's making me feel this way today. So just as far as, outside of the treatment room, we always kind of want to work on those self-care aspects too, maintain the results.
Yeah, and you and I have also talked a lot about, and I actually forgot this, actually I think the very first symptom that I came into you for was bloating and energy stagnation, if you recall. We talked a lot about, kind of like emotional, mental components of that. Sleep for sure was a big one, and I was having that like 2-3 a.m. wake up situation. I think the Oura Ring definitely helps, because sometimes just having the data gives you that sanity check. Yes, my sleep quality was poor last night, or now I'm sleeping better, and it's cool because it kind of gives you that data. Even when your HRV balance or like the quality of your sleep improves, you can really tell. I think the sleep component is interesting. It would be good to dive into. A lot of people in today's day and age do struggle with, for one reason or other, whether it's not getting enough sleep because of schedules and trying to fit a lot of different things in. Sleep quality from anxious thoughts, or their mind is racing, or I know we've talked about the 3 a.m. thing, there being sort of I actually loved the metaphor that you used at the beginning of the episode, like of kind of this communication issue of like a breakdown of communication between like organs or energy centers. Maybe you could share a little bit about that with the audience, because that was really interesting.
Sure. So I guess another main point in Chinese medicine is that we're always looking at patterns. A symptom doesn't just spontaneously happen on its own. It usually happens within a context. And so with sleep issues, there's different ways they can manifest for people. Sometimes they just lay there for hours with racing thoughts and can't get themselves to go to sleep. Sometimes it's like you go to sleep, but then for some reason around 3 a.m., you seem to be up and thinking about things again. And in Chinese medicine, those are two very different patterns. And so we would treat them separately. Treat them differently. And like in your case where you're waking up at a specific time, that actually correlates to knowing that there was an imbalance with the organ system. I was using acupuncture channels along the body to create a smoother flow from one organ system to another. And so by balancing that out, it actually was able to keep you restful during that time period.
That's so real.
It works,
It totally works. I completely agree with you. Sometimes you just have to see it to believe it. So I always encourage everybody to give acupuncture a try. A lot of the questions I sometimes get, and we could talk about this a little bit, is like, does it hurt? Like, what's actually happening while the needles are in you, and how long you're kind of sitting with them. And I can speak to the first part. It doesn't really hurt. Sometimes certain points as they're going in or coming out, the needle will feel more present than others. I would never call it, for me, it's never really graduated to a pain sensation. But sometimes I think we've talked about how that actually indicates that point kind of needs a little bit of extra love. But I wouldn't say that it hurts. And I usually have them in for almost an hour, a little bit less.
From the time we start, it's probably more like 30 to 45 minutes of needle retention when you're able to just lie there with the full set of needles in. The needles are incredibly small, and I do understand that your initial reaction to the idea is not going to be positive. Oftentimes, if I just show the needle to somebody, that relieves all of it, and flexible too. It's nothing like a hypodermic needle, the type that you would get a shot at the doctor's office. It's so much smaller than even like a safety pin or a sewing needle. And they're actually flexible because they're designed to move with the body so that you're able to make adjustments if you need to keep you comfortable during the treatment.
Could we talk a little bit about what's happening while they're actually in? The reason why I'm kind of interested in this actually too, and we haven't talked too much at length about this, but I think I've mentioned this to you. I've actually noticed what's cool about wearing the Oura Ring during acupuncture is it almost always registers a nap. Most of the time I'm not actually sleeping. I'm just relaxed, but it kind of registers as a nap on the Oura Ring, which I have to assume is like heart rate related. So it's probably just a deep form of relaxation. What's kind of like happening while the needles are in versus like what's happening afterwards, if that makes sense?
Sure. Yeah. Actually, a lot of people who receive acupuncture regularly refer it to nap time because that's generally what happens when you receive acupuncture. It turns on your parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and restore side. So like when you're sleeping at night, your body just, all its energy goes internally. And that's when you're, doing all the rest and restore, getting you ready for your next day. So it really is physiologically shifting you into the same state you're in when you're sleeping at night. What's interesting is now with modern medicine, they can design more experiments around acupuncture treatments. And so a lot of times studies will measure brain waves. They'll find different biological markers to track in the bodies, especially different hormones or neurotransmitters. And they can show after a certain acupuncture treatment how those physiological markers have been influenced in the body, why stress goes down, why your sleep has a circadian rhythm is more regulated. You can actually measure those things a bit better now.
That's really interesting. It's like one of these things, again, you kind of feel it, but then let's see the data and be like, oh yeah, that's real. Mm-hmm. That's how I feel when I see the Oura ring. Whenever it's like, when I don't actually fall asleep and it says that I'm napping, I'm like, oh, that's great. Because for me, as somebody who meditates, I know that getting into essentially a sleep-esque state is the best possible case scenario because you're tapped into your subconscious in a way that you aren't usually. But I think it's cool to think about different practices that can get you there. For me, it almost fast tracks that. Usually if I'm sitting down for a meditation, it'll take me almost 30 minutes to get into that relaxation state. And that's when the meditation actually begins. So unless you have an hour and a half, you're not really getting a lot of time. I'm sure other people can drop in quicker. But with acupuncture, I feel like when the needles are in, it kind of activates that. Maybe it's the parasympathetic state, as you're saying, but it's like you have that kind of intense feeling of relaxation where you're kind of on the precipice of like wakefulness and dream. If you're able to stay conscious, I find that that's an amazing place to sit for meditation.
Definitely.
Is so fun.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because the body is constantly changing and evolving. And so when a person comes in for the acupuncture treatment, I'm always evaluating their body based on that day. But that also means that your experience with acupuncture can change also. So for some people, it's going to be like they're out. They need that actual rest where everything is turned off.
Yeah.
But for most people, they do stay in the state of, some people describe it as like drifting around. It's like you're completely at rest and relaxed. It's not that you have racing thoughts, but your brain is able to just kind of wander and touch on different thoughts that have been bouncing around in your head, but you haven't had time to give it thought. So it's very much kind of a meditative state, but it's also a body sensation too.
For sure.
There's a certain heaviness and relaxation that goes with it.
Yeah, absolutely. That actually reminded me of like another kind of point that I did want to make sure that we kind of touched on, which is being open to something like acupuncture. For myself, I was thinking for a lot of us in the kind of Western world, it's like, I do think Western and Eastern medicine, for reasons that we have discussed a little bit today, are fundamentally and philosophically different. Sometimes the idea of these things can feel a bit woo-woo or hocus pocus or like, how could that possibly work? And I think sometimes like the thing that turns on the light bulb is when you kind of try to go the Western route and you try to go that route and like you are hitting a wall. So like in my case, we've talked about, I feel like my entree into anything non-Western medicine related was at some point in my mid-20s, I went off birth control. I had been on birth control for so many years and I couldn't get my period back for like a year. I got my hormones tested and everything was coming back normal. All the panels were normal. Nobody could explain why I just wasn't getting my period. And I was like, am I just like broken? Am I never going to get my period again? And at the time I was living in Dubai. And there's, a strong Indian population there, lots of Ayurvedic medicine shops. And I just walked into one day and I told the guy, I was like, I haven't had my period in a year. He gave me a bunch of herbs that tasted absolutely horrible. After a year of trying traditional medicine to get my period back, I started taking these herbs and 2 weeks later, I got my period. It was regular, like literally like clockwork ever since then and has like never really faltered other than like very, very short periods of time of intense stress or things like that. For me, I feel like that was the eye opener of hitting a wall. It got to a point where you feel like you have no other option. You're like, I'll try anything. Even if I don't really believe it, I'll just try it because I'm kind of desperate. I wonder if you've seen in your practice examples of this. I'd love to illuminate for the audience some of the types of issues that can be solved, examples of things that maybe like that kind of fall under the inexplicable category. Because I think it's medically the most frustrating thing as a patient when it's like you have these symptoms that are clearly something's wrong, your body's speaking to you, but you run all the labs, you run all the tests, and like nobody can figure out what's wrong with you.
Yes. In a way, I love that about my profession is that people often do come to us as the last resort. They have tried everything else. They've gone to every other specialist, and they are left to think that it's in their head or it's a problem that they have to live with. That's just how they are now. And often that's not the case. Your example with the period being irregular, super common. I see that all the time. But I see a lot of other just like really unexplainable things too. One example, I had a medical doctor from China, and he had this pain in his mouth, kind of like at the maybe at the root of the tooth or the gum, but he'd been to every specialist under the sun and nobody could explain why he was feeling this pain. He didn't have a lot of faith in Chinese medicine, but he was on vacation and decided to give me a try. Within about 3 treatments, the pain was gone. And I never knew exactly what it was either. But that's kind of the beautiful thing about Chinese medicine. It's like we don't always need to know why. We can look at the pattern. We can look at the individual and pretty much get all the information that we need. So it wasn't that my treatment was, I hope this works. I had a very clear treatment for him based on his patterns. Another example is I had somebody recently who had a pretty bad flu, and most of her symptoms were upper respiratory, but afterwards she had this lingering pain in her abdomen. First thought was maybe it's like a UTI or something more serious. She went to every doctor. They ran every test. Everything came back as normal. And she was sent away. Well, it's probably in your head. It'll probably go away. So she came in and saw me. And with her, actually, it was one treatment. In Chinese medicine, it's like we didn't have a physiological explanation for it, but there was a pattern of imbalance that was being displayed. And just putting that back into balance, her body was able to take care and resolve the problem. Both Western and Chinese medicine absolutely have their places. Chinese medicine is really good, though, with those conditions where it might not show up on a lab yet. There is an imbalance there, but it's not physically quantifiable. We have our own set of tools and diagnostic resources like the tongue, the pulse, observing the body and understanding what does this specific body need.
Do you think that sometimes in those cases, what's happening is like the imbalance, if more time went on, maybe would be reflected in labs, but the problem is just so nascent that it's not perceptible by diagnostics right now?
I would say for the most part, yeah. I would say with most disease, it always starts somewhere. You know, it didn't just spontaneously develop one day. And it can arise from a variety of different places. But sometimes when you're able to read and understand the signs that your body's giving, you can start to support the body and give the body what it needs and hopefully avoid it turning into a disease.
The other thing that I love about working with you is obviously we do the acupuncture, but every time it's a little bit different based on what's going on. We talk a lot about nutrition and lifestyle and everything being connected. I think it would be interesting for people listening because acupuncture can be a tool for so many different types of issues, giving our audience the sleep and probably hormonal imbalances just based on conversations I've had with people that listen to the podcast and friends of mine. I wonder if we could talk a bit about, even just from a pattern perspective, some of the main things that you see. You know, let's say if somebody is experiencing, I think irregular periods is super common, whether it's they're not coming at all or they're kind of just all over the place. They're 40 days, then it's 20 days, and you don't know if you're ovulating. And then different iterations of sleep, whether it's full-on insomnia or waking up in the middle of the night. I wonder if there are specific patterns or in addition to the acupuncture, from a nutritional perspective, like things borrowed from general Eastern traditions, but things that you would recommend to anybody in general, like drinking warm lemon water in the morning instead of cold water, or like trying to avoid cold foods in the morning.
Hormonal issues, we're going to make a personalized treatment for them, but we definitely see frequent patterns of disharmony. And a lot of the signs and symptoms, unfortunately, are the things that women are told they have to live with. So likeness or moodiness, back pain, brain fog, all of those symptoms actually speak a lot to acupuncturists in terms of, okay, what's imbalanced in the body? Because two people can have irregular periods, but those symptoms around the irregular periods could be a very different pattern. As a practitioner, I'm going to treat them differently, but I would say as just, everyday person, not ignoring what your pattern of symptoms in relationship to your period, because that's actually going to give you clues as to how you can take care of yourself.
Ooh.
Even in terms of how we experience menstrual, bleeding. Is it a dark color? Are there clots? Is it a lot in the beginning and then peter off? Or do you have trouble with your period starting? Again, those are all very specific signs to your body and what your body specifically is struggling with. So I think the main thing is, don't ignore your body's way of communicating with you. I think we're unfortunately kind of trained to do that and just power through and keep going. But, our body's communicating with us all the time, and taking that moment to reflect, to stop and think how you're experiencing your body at these different time periods is going to start giving you the knowledge to make the changes.
That's really interesting. I've actually never heard that perspective before, in the sense of like, these things that societally have agreed or decided are normal and like part of the normal process, kind of like second guessing that and being like, well, what if you didn't have to feel that way every month? Having your period didn't mean that you have like this extreme pain. Because to your point, I do think that's in general, like,
yeah,
I feel like it's kind of like, oh, that has heavy cramps. Whereas what you're saying is, well, maybe that's not rooted in your body's identity, but is your body actually trying to communicate something to you?
Exactly. Those are signs of an imbalance. And they're things that can, if with the proper regulation, you don't have to experience those things, or they're going to be minimal.
Yeah.
They're not going to be disruptive throughout your day.
I love that we're talking about this. It's something I feel so passionately about, I think, and I've been off hormonal birth control for a very long time. For me, it's so deepened my connection to my body. I so see now, to your point, like kind of like my cycle, like a woman's cycle, as it's like a gift from God. It's like another way I feel like you get this much more in-depth communication from your body about your body, right? And sometimes for me, even, I'll see symptoms in my period that like are very clearly related to like emotional or mental or stress or like things that are actually going on in my life. Everything is so connected. And I think that, yeah, there's so much power in starting to kind of like just question the default, just question the fact that, yeah, this is the way that it is. This is the way that it has to be. I think a lot of the times it's easy to demonize your period. People are like, oh, the luteal phase, the period, like this, that, and the other. Like, I'm in such a bad mood. It's really interesting because if you reframe it, it's kind of like a gift of rest as well, because that's your body letting you know that this is a short period of time in the month where you actually need to relax a little bit and give yourself permission to chill and take things a little bit more slowly and maybe hold off on intense exercise for 3 to 4 days. I just don't hear that being talked about for a lot of people. It's the idea of cramping, feeling sluggish, and feeling irritable.
Exactly. Yeah. It's too bad that we are kind of raised to have such an antagonistic relationship with our period, because, it is a gift in many ways. And it's just a matter of what our relationship with it is. And I think that is being really redefined right now, which is great to see.
I'd love to talk a little bit too about, I think, so we talked about kind of like hormonal issues as being one big one. And I think like we've talked a little bit about how acupuncture can help with that. With sleep, is there anything as well that you would say, like just in general for people to look out for, or things that acupuncture might be able to help with? Just so if anyone listening to this is kind of like, oh, this might apply to me, they kind of know, okay, this might be something that can be addressed.
Well, I think a lot of people are I think they're aware that if they have a sleep, they can identify that pretty well. There's a lot you can do around sleep behavior to encourage your body to get on a better schedule, like staying away from screens before bed, creating a ritual around going to sleep so that your body and your mind is prepared to transition into that phase from a busy day. It's really hard to go all day and then jump into bed and fall asleep. And so, actually creating a transition around that. Unfortunately, resetting your sleep cycle actually can take a long time. Even when I treat that, I always have that conversation with people. It usually took a while for that disruption to happen, whether you're aware of it or not. Disruption was happening that led to the sleep disturbances. Get your brain having patience, sticking with all that good sleep behavior. But then acupuncture, and a lot of times I use Chinese herbs when I'm dealing with sleep issues. It can get you there faster. Kind of buckle in, consistent with this behavior for several months before you might see the results that you really want. Acupuncture can really get you there a lot quicker.
I'm glad you brought up the herbs too, because I would love to talk a little about, obviously there's kind of the acupuncture, which is what I see you for. I know you also do some massage therapy, experience with Eastern medicine, acupuncture, Chinese herbs, all these things informs massage therapy. Are there similarities or differences? And with the herbs as well, how you come up with the protocol and art, and it's very custom, just compared to like all of the different things that are going on for every individual person. I'd love to understand just sort of your philosophy in general. There are so many different tools I feel like that you have access to, which is awesome, that you can actually treat the whole person in so many different ways. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, it's definitely awesome to have so many resources. And that's something I love about this career too, that there's constantly something new to learn. Within Chinese medicine, Chinese herbology is a huge part of it. And it's been around the whole time, 5,000 years plus and counting. So it's a really robust area within Chinese medicine. And it's really beautiful because rather than, I think in Western medicine, a lot of times we'll use one herb for one symptom. So like if you maybe have an upset stomach or something like that, you'll have some ginger or something like that. In Chinese medicine, everything is a formula. So it's using a combination of herbs that will treat the whole body. So it might be specific for a sleep issue, but it's also going to help regulate and balance the other organ systems in your body, because if there's unrest somewhere else in the body, that's going to slow down the healing process. So it's looking at the whole body and combining herbs together to treat the person.
Are there specific organ systems that you feel are the most problematic for people that you see?
Definitely, yeah. So unfortunately, in our modern age, stress is a constant factor. The liver organ system is the most influenced by stress. Stress will create an overactive liver system, creating havoc. It can often start with disturbing sleep, causing emotional anxiety and depression. But it can even have like physical symptoms too, where, some people will start getting kind of like floaters in their eyes, or, definitely menstrual issues show up physically in a person.
Interesting.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I remember too, like when I was first starting to have those symptoms, even back when I first started acupuncture before I moved to Miami, like I had all these symptoms. It was always, for me, my liver is just like always struggling to give my liver love. And it's like craving like sauerkraut and like craving like really, and like radishes, like really sour, spicy foods. And I remember my acupuncturist at the time was like, oh yeah, that's your liver. So it's funny, even just thinking about the foods that your body is asking for, which again, it's like whole system thinking. Your body's so smart. It's going to communicate to you through symptoms. It's going to communicate to you through cravings. It's going to communicate through your menstrual cycle. Like there are so many different ways that your body is constantly talking to you. I feel like sometimes the temptation is the modes of communication can be uncomfortable, which is kind of the point, because it's like, listen to me. So sometimes it's like, well, let me just turn off the mode of communication. Let me just approach the symptom, which is like, again, but to your point, acupuncture is all about figuring out what is your body actually trying to say. But balance is kind of the through line that ultimately everything comes down to an imbalance or a lack of communication between organ systems. How do we get everything working together?
That's exactly right. It may feel uncomfortable, but those symptoms, really think of it as your body talking to you and communicating and letting you know what's wrong, and most importantly, what it needs. And sometimes you're going to need some help to interpret that. Definitely don't ignore how your body's talking to you. And that can be very challenging, especially in this day and age, because we have a lot of distractions around us. As you mentioned, cravings. If somebody is eating a lot of processed foods, a lot of sugar and salt and foods like that, it changes what your body craves. It's going to gear your body to only want those things, only want sugary drinks or salty foods. You can even see that sometimes with thirst. The body can be very dehydrated and we misinterpret, I need something, I need to satiate myself. Ends up being food rather than hydration. As you're able to shift your life and eat more clean, whole foods, those natural cravings start to come back. You can trust them a bit more. You're going to know the difference because it's not sauerkraut or radish.
Yeah. I love a spicy radish. You become more in tune with your body. Even eating food now, I feel like I experience food so differently. And like even just biting into a radish, I'm like, wow, this is like very spicy. Like sometimes I'm like, you get different flavors out of your food. I think so much of the time, speaking for myself for sure, we're in a rush all the time, just in general. Sometimes it's for good reason. You're trying to get stuff done. We live in Miami for a reason. It's the hustle and bustle. I think there's something beautiful about that. And I'm very pro ambition and doing cool things and whatever. But this is where I think your body, like pain and symptoms as a mode of communication from your body is so powerful. So many of us take it way too far. It's really about balance. It's such a powerful reframe. Symptoms, pain, menstrual cramps, all these things we judge as good or bad. It's like, oh, this is bad that I'm having this. Well, maybe it's not, because to your point, it's like it's your body's way of speaking to you. Maybe if you didn't get that symptom now, to your point, like disease always starts somewhere, right? So maybe it festers and grows silently and then becomes like a cancer or something more serious that is much harder to wind down. I just love the concept of reframing the pain as a messenger. Acupuncture is one tool, of which there are many, to kind of like, once you have an understanding of what that symptom is trying to tell you.
Exactly. To your point there, a lot of people will come in for a treatment, whether it's, I also do like massage. And as I'm working with them, they start discovering all sorts of things about their body.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know it hurt there. I didn't know this was, because we are all just trying to get through the day and we're trying to power through.
Yeah.
But yeah, there needs to be a place for reflection, both, with your thoughts, but with your body too. And creating a space where you can check in and say to yourself, how am I doing?
That's one of the things that I honestly love the most about working with you too, because every time I come in, it's like we spend some time chatting in the beginning, and sometimes you'll ask me questions that I haven't asked myself. It's like, oh yeah, how are you feeling? How was your sleep this week? And I'm like, oh yeah, how was my sleep this week? And to your point, I feel like that often happens where I'm like, oh yeah, now actually come to think of it, I'm having this thing, or I just noticed that, I'm feeling a little bit this way or that way. And then we do actually treat it. But I think it goes back to, it's just another tool to come home to your body. I coach Pilates part-time. There's a general trend. The same with fitness, with a workout. I've seen TikToks of people, kind of like creating memes around this of like, going to solid core, because solid core is a very tough workout. It's like the only way to get through a solid core class is to dissociate. I fundamentally disagree, because to me, it's like exercise. It's in the same way. I mean, the more connected to your body that you are, A, like the results are better, but B, I just think like that's kind of the whole point. Like at the end of the day, all of us want to feel at home in our body. Sadly, many of us, for many reasons, don't feel at home in our body. We feel like we live inside a body that we're trapped in, or don't have that sense of connection. When you've only ever felt that way, you don't even know what it would feel like to feel otherwise. But I really feel like having that connection and love for your body as well, where it's like you genuinely, like, it's like a child. Like if a child speaks to you and is like, hey, I'm having this issue, you're like, oh my gosh, like, let me take care of you. How can I help? But our bodies speak to us through pain, through symptoms. And we basically tell that little child, suck it up. And I think that acupuncture is so powerful. I think specifically working with somebody like you has such a, like, I don't know, you are so compassionate. You care so much for the whole person, which is so awesome. But you have such an understanding for the body and the mind and the soul as like a system. It really allows you to drop in and reconnect to everything that your body is saying to you on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis, which is so amazing.
And I would say that's what really attracted me to Chinese medicine too. It's about moderation. The extremes are imbalance. So from day to day, certain things are going to work different for you. And so just being mindful of that and being kind to your body. Live life the way it needs to, be what it authentically is. Especially brought up the health fanatics and whatnot. I'll see that in the treatment room a lot too, where people are very interested in doing the best that they can for themselves, which is wonderful. And experiencing some discomfort in life is part of life. It's unavoidable, and it's not always a negative thing. I can definitely get the person who wants to do everything exact and perfect too, and will come in and, well, what exactly should I be eating? How much sleep exactly should I get? That's always a tricky subject, because in Chinese medicine, the body changes from day to day. Right. So if you have this exact regimented life, might not be the healthy things your body needs that day.
Someone shared a passage from a book with me recently, and it just reminded me of that, of like, you as an entity are like a river, and it's like, yeah, you kind of are not the same from moment to moment, right? Your body on a cellular level is constantly changing, and then, you know, emotions are changing, things are changing. And I think that's really hard for us to accept. I mean, I can speak to that too. Like, sometimes it's like, let's say you find a fitness routine and a nutrition routine that's working for you for a period of time, and you see this a lot. I feel like I've heard this from a lot of my friends too. And then at some point it just like stops working. You're stagnating, and it's frustrating because you're like, well, this was working for me. Like, what happened? And sometimes it's like, that worked for a season. Like, there's so much power, I think, that you have to kind of accept. It's hard because, you know, with life, we always want everything to stay the same. Change is challenging, but it's like going with the flow. Just because something worked this week doesn't mean it's going to work next week.
True. Yeah. And I think it would be great if it worked that way, because at the foundation, it's like we want that control. It gives us a sense of control. Right. If we can say, okay, this is what works. If we do these specific steps. But unfortunately, life is rarely like that. With Chinese medicine, that's a philosophy that's kind of built into it, because again, like with all the different acupuncture channels and organ systems that we use, they're all related to different seasons, colors, and it's their relationship to each other is that they're always transforming, almost like from spring to summer, fall to winter. It's like life is always in continuous motion. And I love how Chinese medicine values that and sees that as part of your overall health picture too, that you are a living entity in this world and you're constantly interacting with it, and the world is interacting with you.
It goes back to the point of your body speaking to you in ways as constant feedback. I was reflecting on this as you were saying that, and I agree. What is it about change that's so frustrating sometimes and can be so scary to us? Exactly to your point, as human beings, we crave control. We want to be able to control things. This is my belief, but it's like, you're still fundamentally in control in the sense that it's all about coming back to yourself. It's like that cheesy adage, all the answers are inside of you, but it's true. So it's like, learning how to strengthen those communication channels, which is why I love this conversation. From like an acupuncture standpoint, from a physical standpoint, there's like learning how to actually listen to your body's cues, and then working with somebody who can interpret those and create a treatment plan for you. And this goes back to the concept of intuition, which is one of my favorite topics. Learning how to also listen to your intuitive pings, your gut feelings about things, and understanding that the answers are never fixed. There's no shortcut. You can't just like, it's not like you can memorize, you know, when you memorize like something wrote for a test and that's like the exam and then you know it and then never have to learn anything again. You just have to keep that in your mind. The inputs are always changing, outputs are always changing. So the only path to really staying connected is to learn how to deeply connect to your inner knowledge, which is through, again, understanding your body, understanding your mind, understanding your intuition, which is empowering, that all the answers are actually there for you. You just learn how to surface them and listen to them.
Like most things, it's your perspective on it. You're out of control. I feel incredibly empowering. Help me and guide me to what works for me.
Yeah, I totally agree. I know in session we've briefly talked about the fact both of you and I have spent some time in Taiwan. I know you've had some awesome travel experiences from what it sounds like actually throughout the years, I think some of which probably related to your work and maybe some for fun. I'd love to hear a little bit about maybe some of your travels inspired or were part of your journey to Eastern medicine and some of the things you've seen throughout those, what those experiences have given you. To think it's, A, we share that passion, and B, I feel like it's, for me, it's always been interesting. Travel is an eye-opener to the fact that the way we do things isn't the only way, and you get a lot of knowledge and insight from how other cultures approach issues.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I value travel so much. Luckily, I had an experience kind of early on in my adult life, so I caught that travel bug, never let go. One of the first experiences I had that really kind of informed how my career would shape up was actually I went to Thailand to learn Thai massage. What I think a lot of people don't know about Thai massage, they think of it as assisted yoga or a stretching session, but Thai massage actually has its own meridian system. During the massage portion, you're kneading and warming up the meridians before you stretch them. I didn't know this until training. These two older women who were retired, and they had their own Thai massage school. And for whatever reason, they kind of took me under their wing. I worked with them. They taught me Thai massage, but they also, something else that is kind of big in the culture is, healing through foods. So one of the women would throw me on the back of her scooter and we'd go to different markets together, and she'd show me all the different foods, tell me what it did for the body and when to use it and when not to use it. I just feel so grateful for that experience because it was amazing. But then also I was like, oh, there's a whole world out there that I want to know more about this. And so, yeah, I think that's what really opened me up personally to the idea of delving more into energy work and holistic medicine.
I love that. It's such a reminder that food has always been medicine. We just lost the plot at some point. We're just like remembering the way we were always supposed to heal ourselves.
And even modern pharmacology comes from food. Yeah, it all started
just so many steps removed.
Exactly.
I feel like there's now a push again. It's like the pendulum swings, and then now it's like back to basics, and now it's all about like, healing through raw foods, like herbs, basically like going back to what people were doing for millennium.
Exactly. Yes.
Before we overcomplicated a lot of things.
Exactly.
Yeah. Before we wrap, I did want to ask a couple lightning questions.
Yeah, of course.
One thing that I love to ask guests is just like one non-negotiable part of your wellness routine for you.
Oh gosh. No, this might sound but having people in my life that I can laugh and snort, that's a non-negotiable. I don't know if everybody would consider that a health regimen, but to me it is.
I actually love that answer because I do think, again, when we think about everything as like mind, body, soul, everything's kind of related. I think relationship and our relationship to people and how people make us feel is actually deeply energetic. And I've become more aware as I've gotten older. It was like, for me, there are all these, whatever you can evaluate, whether it's a friendship or a romantic partner, a business partner, like there are so many different like qualities that you can look at in somebody to determine whether or not you think that they'll be a good fit in your life. But ultimately, everything comes down to energy and specifically how somebody makes you feel, right? So to your point, you are somebody who needs to feel like you can laugh and have humor and have an arbiter of like, okay, you want to look for people that bring that into your life.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like no matter how hard the day is, to have somebody in your life to be able to go home to someone that's just going to like listen to you and then just like start laughing with you.
This is where it goes to like, okay, these things can sound a bit hokey or like whatever, but then there's so much science around, how people with strong relationships or like strong marriages live others. Yeah. All of the physiological markers of health increase when you have strong relationships. So the blue zones, one big thing about blue zones, I just came back from NOSAR, which is a blue zone, so I've been like reading about blue zones, is like community and the idea of like having a strong knit community and feeling backed by people. I think it's super interrelated.
Yeah, we didn't get into this whole lot in terms of that overlap between what we're discovering now about health and Chinese medicine, but I feel like that a lot. I think it's important to stay on top of new discoveries, but some studies come out and it's just like, well, duh.
That's so funny. And then one more question, just for anybody listening, let's use this one specifically for women, although of course men, you're welcome here too, given that a lot of our audience members are women. What's one thing you wish more women knew about their bodies or about their health?
I don't actually, to allow yourself to rest, especially these days, and just that the whole like hustle mentality, go powerful. I just had a baby and I'm down to my goal weight already. That component of rest is just as important than everything else that you're doing for yourself. So just, being kind to yourself and letting yourself heal and rest.
Well, thank you so much, Alyssa. Yes. I want to close with just how people can find you, book with you, basically how they can find you and contact you and get in touch if anybody wants to try out acupuncture, just follow along with what you're doing.
Well, thank you. And I've loved being here talking with you today. Thank you so much for having me on. Sure. They are in the Miami area and would like to come in and see me. I'll give them 10% off their first treatment. They can basically just mention this podcast People can always schedule online. My website is www.vividqi.com. That's VIVIDQI, acupuncture.
Perfect. And we will put everything in the show notes. Definitely recommend reaching out to Alyssa, as everybody has now heard on this episode. I've been seeing Alyssa for several months. She's amazing. She's cured so many of my ailments, and always a pleasure to work with you and also chat with you. This was so awesome. Thank you so much for coming on, Alyssa.